Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I am going to be talking about my 10 favorite Elvis releases on the Follow That Dream label. Now, I don't have everything on the label. I usually don't buy the live releases, and I try to get a hold of all the studio releases. And I've got like 30-something of them, and there's a lot more than that out there. But I'm going to show you my 10 favorite that I own, and they are just all wonderful releases. Now, of course, we are acknowledging the death of the King of Rock and Roll, who passed away on August 16th, 1977, at the age of 42. You know, between you and me, it was August 77, so I hadn't turned 14 yet. So I was 13 when he died. And 42 it didn't hit me as being young. You know, now, of course, me on the cusp of 60, I'm thinking, man, that's young. I realized that, quite a while ago. But, my brother Mike and I, we were music fans, but we were more Beatles, Monkees, Neil Diamond, Glenn Campbell. But there was always the Elvis aspect in our lives. Elvis was always omnipresent. I think my parents had like the Suspicious Minds single, and we would play that. We would see, on summer days or after school, we would see some of the Elvis movies on TV, and, we'd always turn those on. We, never watch them from beginning to end. We'd always see 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there. They were fantastic. I think that we may have seen That's the Way It Is in the theater. It might have been the drive-in. I don't remember 100%. My brother Mike will verify that after I talk to him. Now, I know that in October of 1972, I got the single Burnin' Love for my birthday. That was one of my birthday gifts, because I love that song. Oh, my goodness gracious. I loved it to death. Loved it every time. I mean, the cowbell, you couldn't get more cowbell than that. Well, I guess you could get more cowbell than that. And then my dad took my brother and I to see Elvis on tour in the theater. And that was, another great experience. I mean, there was a little gospel segment in there, and what was I? I was 10, 11 years old when that movie came out. And, I'm like, oh, let's get past this. Let's, get back to the live performances. Now, of course, the little gospel section is one of my favorites in the movie. It's wonderful because a lot of great performances on that. And then, of course, we watched Elvis Aloha. Now, how weird is it that show was broadcast live via satellite all around the world when he did that performance in January of 1973, except the U.S. We didn't get to see it until April of 1973. It was not broadcast live in the U.S. To me, that is just mind-boggling. Just everywhere else got it. But, whatever. But, and then, of course, I remember being in my friend Pat's room at his house, and we were playing the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour. And, yeah, I know, nerd kids, what I was, 13 years old and playing Beatles records. And then his mom just opens the door, Elvis died, and then shut the door. And me and Pat look at each other, whoa. So we ran back to my house, and then we told my brother. And it was pretty monumental. The first and only time that I've gotten into an artist even deeper after the passing. Normally, it has kind of the opposite reaction for me. Whenever an artist dies, I sort of distance myself from the music for a little while. But let's stop talking about that. Let's get into Elvis Presley. The FTD releases are some of my favorites. FTD stands for Follow That Dream, which is a collector's only label, so you can't just walk into any store and get them unless they've got used copies of them. Generally speaking, you can buy them from shopelvis.com or graceland.com or any of the other online stores, but they're really worth your time and effort. And the studio things consist of the original albums, plus tons of bonus tracks, alternate takes or singles that came out about that time that weren't on the album, things like that. Just really wonderful. But they had some unique releases. A lot of them are in my top 10 favorite Follow That Dream releases. We're going to start with number 10. And this is a set called Devil in Disguise, the Lost Album Sections. This is sort of it's a fake album, I guess you could say. Elvis did a lot of recording, both for his films and for, various singles and albums. He didn't go in, like the Beatles would and record a set of 12 or 14 songs and then release that as an album. Elvis just went in and just did a bunch of sessions, and then they would cobble those together and put out an album. And Devil in Disguise sort of combines a bunch of recordings from the early to mid 60s that contains that would have gone great together as an album, but were never released together. And it's really a great set here. This is a Follow That Dream exclusive. Now, this album was available as a single disc, and it was called For the Asking. And I think that came out in the 90s. But this has a bunch of bonus tracks on top of For the Asking. And For the Asking itself is also a fake album, using tracks from that sessions. Colonel Tom Parker just didn't do Elvis any justice. So in a perfect world, either For the Asking or Devil in Disguise would have been a great album, and highly, highly recommended. And that's number 10 on my list of favorite FTD releases. Here's another one in that series of should have been albums, and this one is called Memphis, Tennessee, and this contains recordings from the 60s, an incredible collection of songs. Boy, this would have made one heck of an album. And there, as you can see, it's got a bunch of the tracks from the album, outtakes, and all that fun stuff. Really, really great collection. So Memphis, Tennessee would be my number 9 pick on my favorite FTD releases by Elvis. Now let's go on to number 8, another in that series. This is called Guitar Man, and this is recordings, kind of mid to late 60s, and just a wonderful collection of songs. Again, they put this together as if it was an album that would have come out about that time, and you'll see there the album tracks, but you also get loads of bonus material. That's right, 2 CDs. This has things like High Heel Sneakers and Tomorrow's a Long Time, Indescribably Blue, Love Letters, the original recording. He also re-recorded it in the 70s. So that's my number 8 favorite Follow That Dream release. My number 7 favorite Follow That Dream release is classic. It's the Elvis Is Back Sessions. It contains the album and loads of bonus material, outtakes. It's incredible to hear how the songs form, because Elvis is recording them live with the band, and you just hear the songs evolve sometimes. If you get like 7, 8 different versions, some of them are like cut off. They get halfway through the song and there's a mistake and they have to restart it. But the way the songs evolve and the way that he adapts his voice to them is just really, really wonderful. So that's number 7, the Elvis Is Back Sessions, for my favorite Follow That Dream releases. Remember when I was just talking about the albums that didn't exist? Standing Room Only was actually an album that was supposed to come out in 1972. And they used this picture eventually for the Madison Square Garden album, but this was essentially the original album cover for this release. And this has like the singles he was putting out at that time, like Burnin' Love. Plus, I love the single version of American Trilogy. It's a live version, just like any other version, but it's probably my favorite version of American Trilogy out of the 17 or so that I own. And but it's just a really incredible. It's sort of like That's the Way It Is, where it's a mixture of studio and live recordings. I think they canceled this because Elvis on Tour came out, and I think they were kind of maybe thinking about putting out a soundtrack to that album, and that never came out there. So really, really wonderful. Elvis, Standing Room Only, another great release on Follow That Dream. That's number 6. Number 5, I just mentioned That's the Way It Is. This is the soundtrack to that great film. It's a mixture of studio and live recordings. Freaking-tastic. Elvis was just in great form vocally, and this contains the full album, plus a lots of bonus material. And of course, when I say bonus material, like I said, it's non-album tracks, it's alternate versions, it's undubbed mixes, whatever you're going to find on these. And they're usually always 2 CD releases, unless they're the sessions ones. And this is just absolutely incredible. Now, number 4 on my favorite Follow That Dream releases. This is probably going to surprise some of you who are more into the earlier stuff. but from Elvis Presley Boulevard, Memphis, Tennessee. And this is an album that came out in 1976. This is the first of two albums that come from the legendary Jungle Room sessions, basically recording his album. He didn't even want to go in the studio, so they brought the studio to him, set up the band in the Jungle Room at Graceland, and they recorded it. And this is probably the saddest that Elvis ever sounded. I mean, he just sounds just like he's depressed and sad, and every song is breaking his heart, and it's really a wonderful collection. And then when you hear the outtakes, they sound even sadder, because they're not adding the strings or the backing vocals and stuff. You just hear Elvis raw, and this is probably the most emotionally raw he ever was, and he still sounded great, but it's just a very sad album. If you don't want to hear Elvis sad, if you want to hear him excited and energetic and happy, check out the other ones that I'm talking about. But this one, oh my goodness gracious, but it's so, so good. I love this album, and I love the bonus material on it. That is my number 4 from Elvis Presley Boulevard in Memphis, Tennessee. My third favorite Follow That Dream release is the Potluck Sessions. And this is more recordings from the early 60s. This is what you're going to love. You're getting tons of versions of so many great tracks like Little Sister. To hear that song evolve over takes is incredible, because, we're all familiar with that final version. But then when you hear these versions, when it's new to all of them, and they're all the musicians and Elvis, they're exploring the song, and they're turning it into what it eventually became. Marie's the Name, his latest flame. This is such an incredible release. It's called the Potluck Sessions. Potluck was an album that came out in the early 60s, and this is a collection of the songs that made the album, as well as outtakes and so much more. Absolutely wonderful. That is my third favorite Follow That Dream release by Elvis Presley. Now let's go to number 2. I've had all the albums and various compilations, etc. in my collection. This got played definitely more than any other Elvis album that I've ever owned, and that is Elvis Golden Records Volume 3. Holy for holy. This covers a lot of stuff off of these early 60s things. This is truly incredible. It not only contains, the original album, what was it, like 10 tracks. I mean, just look at the songs that are listed there. I mean, you get like Fame and Fortune and Stuck on You, Good Luck Charm, Marie's the Name, Little Sister, Are You Lonesome Tonight, It's Now or Never. You get all those, plus you get other songs or B-sides from that period, and you get loads of alternate versions. Now, I know any of the compilations are not albums. I should be rating maybe the studio albums, but no, this is the most listened to album in my collection. I had it on vinyl, I had it on the original CD, then I had it on the remastered CD with bonus tracks, then I had it FTD. I also have it in that 60 CD box set. This is just truly an amazing album. Elvis Golden Records Volume 3 is my number 2 favorite Follow That Dream release. Now, my number 1 favorite, you've probably noticed that I didn't mention this period of his career, and that's because this period of his career is, I think, the best he's ever sounded, actually. And yeah, I'm talking about 1969, the Memphis sessions from, American Studios. Now, of course, I could have said, from Elvis in Memphis, and that is great. Oh, my God. That's got bonus tracks and outtakes and stuff. Or I could have mentioned Elvis Back in Memphis, which has bonus tracks and outtakes. Those are all from the same sessions. And then there's a third release that sort of rounds up the stuff that wasn't on those first two. And this contains a bunch of alternate takes and stuff like that. But since I couldn't decide which one to choose, I decided to choose American Sound 1969, which is a 5 CD set that is pretty much the best of those. I think that if you have those 3 that I just showed you, I think you've got everything on here. Or there might be 1 or 2 tracks that aren't on here. I never really went back and compared them. All I know is this is probably just the greatest period in Elvis's career in terms of his recordings. We're talking Suspicious Minds, In the Ghetto, Rubberneckin', True Love Travels on a Gravel Road, Only the Strong Survive. I mean, he was just so into it. And to hear the alternate versions, to hear the undubbed versions, to hear all that stuff, it's just absolutely, truly incredible. And this is Elvis American Sound 1969. And that's my number one favorite release on the FTD label. Now, just let me verify with you all that the FTD label, Follow That Dream, is an official label. It is through RCA. This is not a bootleg label. These are straight from the tapes. And what an incredible collection of music. Elvis, the greatest male vocalist, in my opinion. Anyway, that's it. I really appreciate you allowing me to talk about my favorite releases on the Follow That Dream label by the late, great Elvis Presley. We are acknowledging, and I'm not celebrating, but we're acknowledging his passing. On August 16th, 1977, he took his final bow, and but he's still loved and beloved by so many today. I appreciate you. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, to ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.